Okay, so now for the knobs, I'm going to embed the nuts. I'm just going to trace out the nut outline. Now what I'm going to do is just chisel out the nuts. Just using a 1/4 inch chisel. Okay, and that's pretty much good enough. The rest of it will be, any loose stuff will be taken up by the, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these connecting rod nuts roughly in half. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is just get rid of the burrs. Quick, not because it's good or anything, just because it seems to be the only thing you can find locally. And it's just easier to use than the West system, especially for small stuff like this. The West system, I think, is way better epoxy, but it's too much muss and fuss to mix for just a small thing like this. Just mix in equal parts, roughly. This mixing tray is just, I've been using this for probably 20-30 years. Just a piece of sheet metal that I bent, and it does a trick. It's small enough that I can put it in the glue cupboard and I don't lose it. I like this better than just using lids and stuff. Just gotta rub that on the inside there. And I put the cut end inside. And just use a square to straighten that, keep that nut straight. Now to clean epoxy, just put lacquer thinner on a cloth, set the cloth on the surface you want to clean, and it'll start to soften up. I've been using this mixing plate for about 20 years or so, and I mean, it's not perfect, but acetone does a fantastic job of cleaning. Okay, I've gone over these with number 60 grit, and then I've re-sanded the flat spots on the belt sander, and now I'm going to go after this with 150. I still got some rough stuff there, right? Now, if I see spots that are still pretty obvious like that, there's no point in trying to take that out with 150. I just go back to 60 grit and start over. Okay. Now I'll go back at it with the 150. Okay, that's much better. Okay, now I got my knobs all sanded down to 220. What I'm going to do now is I just do not like the feel of wood sanded to 150. I'm sorry, but to me it feels rough, and it just doesn't give you that super feeling that you can get. You know, I just like the feel of cherry, and I don't know why. I don't think it's the right wood or anything for knobs. It's just something that I happen to like. So. Sanding with the 220 or the 320 grit with the random orbital sander. Now what I'm going to do is run over it with the 320 grit for my final sand. Now you'll notice that no wonder why I keep taking these on and off, because for 60 in grit, the technique for sanding is a lot different than it is for finish sanding. 60 grit for me is for scratch removal and defect removal and whatnot, and shaping, where as you get up in the grits, the technique tends to get a lot more delicate. And if I just go from 60 to 150 to on and up, I tend to make a lot more mistakes. So I do everything with 60, everything with 150, and everything with 220. And then everything for the final sand does it's by itself again. That's just how I do things. Whether it's right or wrong, I have no idea. So this is one that's the bottom one has been finished with the 320 grit. The top one has not. You'll see that from the flat to the round borders are it just looks like it's blended in more than with the one that hasn't been sanded yet. That's why I go back over it again. Always keep your nut on the same side, because it scratches up. Cherries, well, it might not for maple and stuff, but for cherry, cherry's fairly soft, so. Keep your marks all on the one side. And this is the finished knob. I'm just going to put in a stud there and epoxy it in. So I think it looks very nice. It feels wonderful. There's only one coat of lacquer on there. I do that on purpose because I like the feel of the wood, and if I put one coat of lacquer in, it pretty much seeps right down into the wood, and you still get that wood feel without the raw wood collecting all the dust and everything. So you get the benefits. I think it's a win-win for me, anyways. Typically I like to use oil. However, on cherry, cherry darkens over time by itself. Plus, I find when I put oil on cherry, it gets way too dark, and I lose the grain and the things that make cherry cherry. So that's why I use lacquer. Normally I would use like for oak or maple especially, I would use oil. I just happen to, I just don't like oil on cherry. Anyways, thanks.